being made aware that there are concerns that public funds are being used to subsidise the cost of laying up ships rather than paying for critical freight capacity. And I'm referring here to the Department's Critical Freight Grant Scheme. And Secretary of State, while you're considering your response to that, can I point out that P&O Ferries announced plans on the 11th of May to cut over 1,000 seafarer and port-related jobs. In fact, the consultation closes today. They're making these cuts to UK jobs after taking millions of pounds from the taxpayer through furlough and freight grant support and paying substantial dividends to their parent company. And in many respects, it's actually worse than BA because apart from making the redundancies, they're also exploiting existing legislation that allows them to retain Filipino crew who are paid £4.50 an hour. So I'd like to know your views on that, Minister, and whether you're going to intervene to support UK jobs in this sector.
Look, first of all, on P&O, I was very, very clear when we looked at the freight route support, the maritime freight route support that I talked about before, the 35 million, that we had to be I had to be absolutely certain that that money was being used to support those specific routes in order that they could carry on flowing and that profits couldn't be made from the routes, but that the service could be provided so we had vital medicines and food brought to the shelves of our supermarkets, but not in relation to the rest of the operation. I sought and received those assurances before granting that money, which went to a number of different organisations. You're right about job losses at P&O, I think 1,100 on the cards, and at Stena 150 as well. I'm deeply concerned about this. I actually have both my maritime minister, who's been meeting with the trade unions and P&O on it, and also bi-weekly meetings actually with my officials and the trade unions on this. It must be the case. Look, I understand that this is an extraordinarily difficult time for a lot of companies and a lot of organisations, of which PO are in front, but you have mentioned rightly that it has ownership through DP World, where dividends get paid shortly beforehand. I'm clear they have an absolute duty to their staff to behave correctly, and that's why I've assigned both Minister and my officials to conversations. And when we provided money for freight routes, that it was absolutely clear that it wasn't a part of making money for the company.
Minister, just very quickly, don't you think there's a case, even outside COVID-19, for reviewing the employment terms of seafarers to prevent companies like P&O and some of those others that you've mentioned from employing seafarers from overseas on far lower rates of pay than UK-based seafarers?
I had a very interesting conversation with my maritime minister and actually with the unions, which I popped into prior to COVID. It must have been right at the beginning of the year, where unions were expressing concern over exactly these points. And I actually went back and checked whether what was happening adhered to the law, both UK and European. It did, and actually we were bound up in a lot of what happens for international maritime law. So it wasn't within our direct remit, not without altering international agreements. But I think that forever we should be driving up standards. And I want to just draw the committee's attention to authorisation that I provided to the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency this past weekend to board 6 different vessels for a company called Global Cruise Lines, where there were concerns about maritime labour convention not being upheld, and I know it was covered to some degree, though not very widely, in the press. There are a number of concerns. 5 of those ships raised significant concerns along the lines of payment, employment agreements not being respected, and critically people being potentially, or the allegation is at least, that people were potentially forced to stay on board for more than 12 months maximum. And this involved 936 crew from 34 different nationalities, and they were all at British ports. So I hope the committee will realise that I'm absolutely unforgiving of any abuse of maritime rights, employee rights, and will act wherever there is cause for concern, which is what happened at the weekend.